Hey everyone, today we're going to be trying to solve some of the hardest checkmate in 2 problems that you can possibly find on chess.com. Stick around, see if you can try and solve some of them, but let's take a look at some of these difficult puzzles. Alright, let's have a look at this first puzzle then. So this one is around 2900. So it is white to move and to see if you can checkmate in only 2 moves. See if you can solve it. White to move, checkmate in 2. Okay, so I think part of the reason why a lot of these puzzles, I should first start by saying, are so highly rated is due to the fact that because when you try and solve them normally on chess.com, they won't tell you whether or not what sort of rating, whether or not there's a checkmate in 2. So I think part of the difficulty of this as a player is you might be looking at some potentially good moves, but you might not be looking for the most efficient moves. Having said that, this one, in order to actually win this particular position, you actually really have to come up with a mate in 2. Everything else just leads to an equal position. So let me just demonstrate why. If you play something like rook to e3 here, this just leads to a very equal position. You can now play king to h6. And if, let's say, you start going on the hunt like this, white hasn't really got any good way to try and checkmate the black king here, and well, unfortunately he's got so much more material, black, that he could even give back some material and still be winning in this position. So we actually do need to come up with a mate in 2 here. It's the only way that you can possibly win this game. So the start to the solution is the move rook to g3, but I will just quickly show you, if let's say you play rook to d6, which also looks tempting, it doesn't work, as then the king just comes to g7 and there's no real good ways of checking this black king. I mean, you might try and do, I don't know, rook to g6 check, but the king just comes over to f7 and there's not really anything too good here. So against a lot of these solutions, one of the difficulties is trying to work out what to do if the king comes to g7, which is why the check g3 is so good. Now this king can't come here, and wherever he goes to, if it is on h6 or h7, both of these squares are losing for black. So firstly, let's have a look at what happens after king to h6. I think this is the most simple solution. Here you've got a very nice checkmate with the move rook to f6 checkmate. Notice that both the bishop and the rook are delivering this lovely checkmate. We have what looks to be some sort of discovered checkmates, but the bishop is now blocking those escape squares down there. Very nice. What happens though after the rook comes here? Well, here we have another nice checkmate, but we're using what we like to call a lawnmower mate. Here we have a double checkmate with the bishop and the rook. Look at that. Very, very nice. A very nice checkmate in 2. 2900, that particular puzzle. Here we have puzzle number 2. Again, another 2900 puzzle. So black has just played the move queen to e7. It turns out that this is just completely losing for white. So try and see if you can work out why this is so bad for sorry, did I say white? I meant black, sorry. Why is this so bad for black? It is now white to move and to checkmate in 2 moves. See if you can solve it. Okay, so again for this one, this does require lots of thinking, a lot of calculation in this one. Now, what you might notice immediately is you can see yet again this rook and bishop formation. When you see this, this is often an indicator that there's going to be some sort of double check or some double checkmating action with these two. So your first temptation is to have a look at some of these checks. However, if you take here on d5, this is just no good, as now the bishop just jumps in the way and it doesn't look like there is any checkmate in sight here. Also, what doesn't work is if you play the move rook takes here on c8. Again, this looks pretty good. The problem is after the rook takes, you might be tempted by throwing in this double check, but it doesn't matter. The king just runs up to c7. So it's quite clear that this rook needs to stay here, which is why the solution to this one is very nice. It is the move rook to f8 check. And you can see here that this check comes with a lot of power. Notice firstly that it is a double check, so he has to, oh sorry, I say double check, it's actually just a check, but he has to respond to this particular threat, but whatever he captures with any of his pieces, he is going to be checkmated. Notice the king can't actually move in this position. So firstly, let's look at queen takes. So against this, we can now throw in the rook to c8 with checkmate. This is very nice because we're using both the bishops here to deliver the checkmate. We've got what looks like a sort of Bodeny style mate here with the rook and bishop also acting in helping here. So against knight takes here, yet again we can take here, and there's nothing that black can do against this particular threat. Rook takes and c here is just too strong. He can't run away with the king, so it turns out in this position white is going to win every time after rook to f8 check. This is another really nice puzzle. Once again, another 2900 rated puzzle. Here in this position, it is black to move and to try and checkmate in 2 moves. See if you can solve it. Okay, so for this one, you will notice immediately that the king has got no legal squares that it can go to. It's being guarded by both the rook and the queen guarding these 2 escape squares. So it would appear that all black needs to do in this position is just find a check. But it's easier said than done. He's not got a light squared bishop which would be able to then check the white king on the light squares. So we've got to do something a little bit different here. Now the first move is very nice, but I'll just show you a few failed solutions here. If let's say you throw in a check here on h1, it turns out that this is completely losing. The king can just run to h2, and there's no real good ways that you can now check the white king. If you try and throw a check over here, or the king just captures on d8, the king is going to run away somewhere over here, and actually it turns out black is now losing in this position. He's got too few material to be able to checkmate the white king. So instead of this, we actually have to use the other check. But you might have looked at this and kind of gone, yeah, but there's a bit of a problem with this. It's after the queen comes to d3, it looks as though this queen can just easily come onto e2 and block it. Well, that's true, but you always have to think about when your opponent moves a piece, it relinquishes its defense of another piece. So this queen here at the moment is defending this h3 move. So if it comes over to e2, it's no longer defending this pawn, and then hopefully you can now see the solution should become quite clear. After the queen comes to d3, queen to e2, the winning move here, queen takes on h3 with checkmate, deflecting the queen away from the defense here to then checkmate here on h3. A very, very nice checkmating solution. Okay, here we have another checkmate in 2 once again. A 2900 rated puzzle. This was a really nice one. When I first tried to solve it though, I looked at it and just went, hold on a minute, this looks like a joke puzzle. There's no way there's a checkmate in 2. So firstly, white has just played the move knight to g2. I should have mentioned that, g3, sorry. So it's black to move and to try and checkmate in 2, but at first glance it doesn't look like it's possible. The main problem here is whenever you try and throw in any forcing move in this position, the king is going to run to g4. So just let me show you an example. If the queen comes to h1, which doesn't work, here the king just runs to g4, and there doesn't look to be any useful checks in this particular position. Now I must stress, you must check in this position. The reason why is that white can always throw in his own checks here on f6, so it makes it so that it's basically forcing that you must come up with some useful check, because otherwise you're just going to end up getting checked a lot by white's pieces and you wouldn't get a checkmate in 2 then. So you've got to find forcing moves. So when I tried to first solve this, I looked up all of the available checks and tried to see if any of them actually work. Well, we've already discussed h1, h2 would obviously fail to just a simple capture. We've also got g2 we can rule out while the king just captures here. We've got the rook takes, but again queen capture doesn't look promising. But we also have the move queen to f1, and this was the move that I was looking at for a while and couldn't really see why this move is so good. Well, after queen to f1, there's only one forced move here, and the king must come up to g4, and this is why I was struggling to try and find the next move. Notice here, by the way, the knight cannot capture because of your pin from this rook. So king comes to g4, and then actually when I played this move I then realised the solution was much clearer. Notice here in this position what's slightly different is this queen is on f1, it now defends this rook on f4, so now you can checkmate with the rook on f4. Notice here that the pawn defends this escape square. Quite a nice little checkmate, quite a nice cute one to maybe show to your friends, that one. Here we have the last puzzle, and this is the hardest one. I've left the hardest for last. So when I first started doing these solvings and having a look for some puzzles, this was the only puzzle that was rated over 3000. It's actually 3088, this particular one. And, well, it is a very hard puzzle, very difficult, couldn't solve it on the first try. I think what makes this one so hard is trying to find the first move in this position. Now, you can see definitely from this position that black is got a dominant position, but he needs to be careful. He has got a lot of pieces around the white king. The white king is totally exposed here, so there should be some sort of checkmate. But it's easy to go wrong in this particular position. If you try and find some, forcing moves, such as, I don't know, let's say rook here to e3, this just totally loses. As well, white is just going to give up lots of pieces back. He's defended all his checking squares, and the white king should be able to escape away. So you've got to be very careful here. It doesn't, and if you play some sort of slow waiting moves, thinking that you're going to just win very slowly, the problem is that white's defenses will get in the nick of time. So just to show an example, let's just say I'm going to just play a terrible move here. Let's say queen here, for example. Well, the problem here is now the the king is going to be able to escape up the board quite easily. Even if you throw, you actually haven't got any useful checks. If you throw this check, the king just runs away, and white should be able to win this position. So you've got to come up with a forcing move. You've got to find the right check in this position. What is the right check in this position? Well, it is the move queen to b5 check. It might surprise you, as it looks as though white should be able to defend this one quite easily. He just plays the move c3, and en passant looks really good, but it doesn't work, as quite simply white has got two moves that are winning. He could either put his king to c2, there's no checkmate, or even better, he actually takes here on c3. The king is actually absolutely safe here, as he's going to end up tucking away and then surrounding himself, shelling up with all of his pieces around him. Bear in mind, he's so far ahead in material here that he can afford to give back some material to the black side. So going back then, en passant doesn't work, but there is one move that does work. One move that checkmates in one move. Were you able to find it? It was the move queen to f5 checkmate. Very nice. Look how the queen has been checked here. You've got a pawn that's guarding this check square here, so on c3. It looks a little bit like a Boden's mate, except you've got a queen and a pawn delivering the checkmate. Really like that one. I think it's worthy of the 3088 rating that it was given. But there we go. Hope you enjoyed those puzzles. If you like what you see, make sure you leave a like at the end of this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hopefully solve some more puzzles. If you like these particular videos, let me know and we can see if we can solve some more together. Take care. Bye.